Good afternoon. I'm Ann Brusky, and I'm the Senior Manager of Public Programs here at the Arts Center, which means I get to work with amazing and very creative colleagues, many sitting right there, in creating programming for the Arts Center in our performing arts, our community arts, our education, and our arts-based preschool. So we're trying to reach diverse constituencies, all while fulfilling the mission of the Arts Center. So just welcome to all of you and to this panel, and this panel is School Crossing, Art, Education, and Environments. And it explores the processes for creating and disseminating relevant programming and curricula inspired by art environments to enrich student learning and inspire future generations to connect with these art forms. Additionally, the panelists will discuss ideas for creating learning experiences for communities shaped by art environment sites. So, on the panel, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Liz Rex and Art Center Education Specialist Jen Balgi, who will talk about their work developing curricula here at the Art Center with along the Education Department here at the Art Center. Jared Roll, who is with the Wagner Grotto, and Marilyn Rolfsmeyer with Nick Engelbert's Grandview in Hollandale, Wisconsin. So each will have a little bit of time to talk about the incredible work they're doing, and then we'll dive into a deeper discussion where you can ask all your burning questions. So, here we go. All right, so Dr. Liz Rex is a lecturer in art education at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Through experiences teaching college, K-12, and community art classes, she has arrived at her current work, which includes researching, creating, and implementing curricula that broaden traditional definitions of art. Her goal is to enable diverse learners to make meaningful connections between art and everyday life. Rex has worked with the John Michael Kohler Arts Center on education projects over the years, and most recently collaborated with the Education Department to develop and document contemporary art curricula using art environments as the focus and inspiration. Liz is co-presenting with Art Center Education Specialist Jen Balgi, a visual artist and educator from Sheboygan, who holds degrees in art and education from Cardinal Stritch University. She strives to use universal accessibility points of artist-built environments to engage learners of all ages and abilities. She is the museum representative on the Professional Development Committee on the Wisconsin Art Education Association Board, and currently serves as president-elect on the Dementia Care Network of Sheboygan County. So, we'll give it over to Liz and Jen.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I have to say I was really excited when Ann and the education crew, who I've worked closely with for a number of years, as Ann mentioned, invited me to, or asked if I would like to help them. Help them create some curriculum and in relation to these exciting artists. And I have a hard time saying no to Kohler. Anytime they ask me to do anything, just don't tell them that. So this was a fantastic journey that we've been on for about a year and hope to continue to grow. So we're looking to create innovative art curricula in relation to the art environment builders and make that available to teachers. So as someone who is in the schools a lot in Milwaukee, I work with art education students and get to be in the classrooms quite a bit. This group of artists is, I would say, underrepresented, except for perhaps by any educators in this room or perhaps on this panel, but you know, it's rare that I see them as a focus in classrooms. So our challenge was to develop curriculum that could demonstrate how the personal stories and the artistic processes of this group of artists can be relevant to young people, and perhaps create bridges between art and their everyday lives, as we mentioned. So we took a breath as we started this project to really think about what we wanted to do, what our goals would be, and how we would achieve them. So the Arts Center wanted to highlight and advocate nationally for their permanent collection of art environment builders, which I was really excited about because in my work here I've always been like, you should be publishing, you should be present, you know, as the graduate student in me or the doctoral student in me. And so knowing that that was a goal was exciting to me. And then also, as I mentioned, to develop innovative art curricula that would be accessible to teachers. So we have busy teachers in mind, and that taking the time to learn new artists and you know, develop new lessons and PowerPoints is probably part of their pleasure, but also given the demands of teaching is not always reasonable. So we want this to be as kind of like
easy to use as possible.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be sort of like a plug and play where we could sort of unload on them and they could just grab it and go. We understand people don't have a lot of time to do things, so we wanted to take the time to do it for them.
Right. And then also this idea of relevance to student learning and their experience. Often art teachers, as makers, we go for the product. What's that shiny thing that students are going to make? When you're looking at artists who work in concrete, glass, you know, this becomes kind of impractical. Is that the right word? Yeah, okay. In you know, with little ones, but the ideas and stories and experiences of these artists are highly relevant, despite the materials chosen. So we wanted to really focus on that as we develop curriculum. So quality art curricula to us was to provide opportunities for personal, community, and world connections through art, ignite excitement and curiosity, and creative problem solving, so very much about open-ended exploration, and then also use themes and materials and processes that would allow multiple points of access. You know, these are very place-based artists, so how could we use themes or other processes that are actually relevant to humans and young people wherever they are. I'll talk a little bit about using big ideas, but we decided that we would utilize big ideas and essential questions to frame student learning, incorporate contemporary art practices and processes, and then also the National Visual Arts Standards has recently been revised, so we wanted to make sure that we are aligning with some of those goals as well and keeping that in mind. So getting to kind of how we actually constructed the curriculum, we were using Understanding by Design by Wiggins and McTeague, which essentially asks, what is that you want students to understand? So this goes beyond kind of discrete facts and skills and gets to kind of larger ideas that are very enduring over time and that young people can engage with. So this has kind of a lifelong component to it. You know, students may forget those artists that they learned about, or the dates or the materials or the times or even the processes, but there's probably something that they can learn from these artists that will create lifelong engagement with the arts. So we want to tease that out. These are kind of one-word snippets of big ideas, but if you're unfamiliar with this way of constructing curriculum, it might be thinking about something like relationships, aging, power, ritual, and so we use the artists as a starting point for developing those.
We felt like with the big ideas we could have so many different students of different like class and race and gender able to look at it and really access it from whatever they were personally experiencing. And I feel like for me that's when I really make a personal connection with an artist, and that's when I remember and really understand the artwork better.
Just as to reinforce this idea of why we use big ideas, help students organize knowledge around conceptual ideas that are connected to the real world. A lot of potential for integration, so if you're working with an idea like power or aging, it can actually be looked at through the lens of art, but also through literature, math, and sciences. And you know, really, when we're talking about how people learn, young people and old people learn much better when they can kind of see how knowledge is connected. Even though as human beings we like to create kind of neat categories for how we learn things. have lifelong potential, as I've mentioned, and then also the new visual arts standards are actually organized by what we want students to understand. So there was a nice kind of alignment between what's going on in our field today. So we began with the artist and really researched and read about them. Obviously, we have a lot of familiarity with the artists and kind of know and love them. But from there, we looked to tease out what big ideas we thought would work for us and also be relevant to students. So we actually had some themes that the curators had also pulled out from these works and had read and looked at those, and some of those, there was some overlap there, but then also some that were distinct to what young people might engage with. So then we were able to identify art lessons from that, but then also start to think about parallel lessons. There's more work to do, right, Katie? One thing I liked about this is the flexibility of it. You know, we generated, I think, 8 big ideas that we could work with, but 9, sorry. And from there, we could, you know, develop as many art lessons as we wanted. Also, in addition to the art environment builders, the displays and exhibitions at Color are also connected by themes, which makes my work as an educator so much easier in terms of developing curriculum. They've done a lot of work for me. So, you know, this opportunity to continue to plug in more ways of looking at this work.
I think, well, if you want to go to the next slide. My favorite part about this process was when we were really sort of teasing out all these big ideas. It was a group of us who were very familiar with the artists, and then we had some interns on staff as well that were sort of participating in it. And it was really interesting to see how, even though they didn't know the artists very well, and we were very familiar with them, how we all sort of came to the conclusion of these same big ideas. And we took out one of the big ideas, that's why we have 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think, and we just sort of, with the Post-its, we stuck them all over the wall, and it was like a kaleidoscope of all these different colors and ideas. And then from there, we sort of nailed them down into these 8 big ideas that we felt had a lot of potential and a lot of different possibilities within them.
Mm-hmm. Including transformation, which we saw both of self, but then also of places and identities, devotion, the idea of objects perhaps through like a material culture lens, in which thinking about these as meaningful objects, materials, identity, of course, story, nature, healing and well-being, and then the idea of place. So the coming slides actually kind of demonstrate what we created for, you know, and is available to art teachers on the website. And so I'll just walk you through one example from the curriculum we developed. So one of the big ideas we were looking at is place, and so we wrote a rationale for each of these ideas. In this one, people connect or identify with a sense of place. For art environment builders, often an ordinary place is transformed into a place unlike any other. Through these ideas, learners can expand their understanding of the connection between the construction of place and individuals and communities. So thinking about why is this an enduring idea, how does it connect to the art environment builders, but then why is this relevant to learners was kind of the rhythm that we took, and then always writing essential questions in relation to that as well, which become kind of philosophical frameworks.
And you'll notice that the essential questions don't have anything to do with art or have to do with art environments, because we wanted it to be like cross-curricular so that teachers could take this idea of place and create a curriculum around even just that big idea. But I think, I mean, and I'm sure you'll agree that place makes so much sense with the environment builders because many of them used whatever they had around. It was their materials and their inspiration and, of course, where the art was located.
Look how happy we are. We have kind of like a, 3 or 4 o'clock bewitching hour where things, but anyway, so finally now we get to the part where we're actually thinking about, well, what would we have students make? So we did some curriculum mapping around these big ideas that we had developed, trying to think about, well, what would we have students do to demonstrate their understanding of these ideas through art production. For each of our lessons then, we created some lesson plans that include the big idea, include information about the artist, include how we might discuss both the big idea and the artist in relation to that idea, and then also provide an idea for art production in the classroom. Jen and I presented on this at a state conference and literally did not get past that slide when the teacher was like, do we get to keep those? So we felt like we were on the right track, like, okay, they want this stuff, so.
And so what Liz is launching into right now is actually, we made PowerPoint presentations that accompany each lesson so that teachers can download the lesson plan and then download the presentation, just pop it up in their classroom, and they can sort of tailor it to fit whatever they need it to fit.
So an example might be, let's talk about the idea of place. Often we would start with the concrete, so young people can enter into these big ideas perhaps best by thinking about what they know and experience. So what places are important to you? Why are they important? How do people create place? Why do they alter their places? You know, we didn't have a classroom to study, just us in a dark room talking to each other.
Wasn't that dark, Liz?
There was some light.
But, you know, lockers, you know, often these places are hard for students to connect with because their parents are in charge of their home, but they have their bedroom, they have their locker, high school parking places. So obviously these would need to be altered based on the teacher and any generational mishaps. But in this lesson, we are particularly interested in the idea of gateways as well as indicators of place. And so we moved into questions then about what can you tell about a place from its gateway, what can gateways symbolize, so looking at connections they might be able to make to broader world contexts. And always trying to tap into popular culture to get them hooked. And then again, can you identify gateways and their significance in your community? And then of course, our connection to the art environment, builders, the kinds of questions we might ask students as they look at our grottos, Prairie Moon Sculpture Garden. So we were able to identify a number of gateways within these pieces as well. And then the last slide is just then an indicator for what students might begin doing in their classroom, creating a mock gateway with this kind of knowledge under their belt now, this understanding and thinking about their personal and community spaces. So the work now, of course, is dissemination and trying to get this out into classrooms so teachers can be using it. So on the website and actually over on that counter over there are all of the lesson plans. And then on our website, we've included our big ideas, the lesson plans, but then also, as Jen mentioned, the PowerPoints for teachers. And then this past summer, we also had an Innovative Educators Institute in which we shared and discussed the work and got some feedback from teachers and what they think of the work as well.
Yeah. And so part of this Educators Institute is something that the Educators Institute is something the Art Center has been doing for a long time. And then we took a year off, and so this year we wanted to sort of revamp it and do something a little new. So when we were working on all this curriculum, it sort of made sense that we would kind of wander Wisconsin and take it around to different places. And so we were able to go to Nick Engelbert's Grandview, and we went to the Concrete Park up in Phillips, and then we did one here in the Art Center at Tellen. And it was really exciting to see how all the educators just responded, not only to the curriculum that we wrote, but also being in the spaces and having them come up with ideas and sort of their response to that. So that was really fascinating. And then there's going to be this slide. Thanks for being here. And then now this is from the Educators Institute that was here. So if you've had a chance to go into the Stella Waitskin Gallery, we've been able to, Louise has developed this alginate wax casting workshop. And it's dental alginate, and so people are able to make a wax casting out of it. And for our school tours, they can make a wax casting and then dip this notebook into wax. And it looks a lot like these resin books that Stella would make. And then you're able to attach this body part, whatever you cast, onto the book. So it's sort of, not only are you exploring sort of this aesthetic approach to how Stella had her work look, but also you're seeing this sort of assemblage where we're taking the different parts that you put it together. So I thought that was a really, really awesome concept, and I'm really glad that teachers got to explore that as well. So you can see those two educators are carving out their castings. And then we were able to go into the galleries, of course, which was a really wonderful opportunity. And all the educators got to go and see all the different areas of the Arts Center, which was fantastic. So, just a couple more. And so now for my little 5-minute spiel about education, I don't just focus, being like education specialist here, we focus on all ages. We have a preschool, obviously, in the Arts Center, and then we go all the way up and we have a program for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So a lot of senior citizens and their caregivers come as well for programming. And so we're given the opportunity to provide these sort of access points for all these people to understand more, not only about themselves through the art, but the artists that created it. And I think that makes it's just a beautiful thing to see all these people really feel like they understand the artists a little bit more. The program that I run for people with memory loss is called Spark, and recently we went into the EVB gallery and we're really talking about all the different crowns, and then we also looked at the mark making that he does when he uses non-traditional tools. So the picture in the top right corner is we used the side of cardboard in this workshop to create this image. And it's really fantastic to see them sort of explore this thing that they've never done before. When you tell someone they're going to paint and you hand them a piece of cardboard, the response is not, oh, okay, I know how to do this, let's go. You sort of have to walk them through it. And then when we, last week, were investigating the crowns in the gallery, we then went and made our own crowns out of clay. We'll see how they come out of the kiln. It's kind of we'll see how it happens. They're a little fragile. And then we also did the alginate casting with them as well. And then this was a 2010 Dr. Charles Smith focused Spark program, which we are going to be doing again this year around Veterans Day. So I'm really looking forward to sort of bringing that historical aspect into our Spark program. And that's, again, the program for people with memory loss. During Arts Day Camp in 2017, and this is an example of what we do with school tours as well, which are developed mostly by my colleague Louise Berg, we did heel-mobiles. So they are given a bicycle wheel. Each class has a bicycle wheel, and then the students can make components that all attach onto the bicycle wheel, and then they can go back to their school with a healing machine, which is really cool. And there even was a school, they brought many students here, and they hung all their healing machines into a hallway and had a healing hallway that people could walk down underneath all their heel-mobiles, which I thought was a really cool idea. And then with our younger learners, we have Keely Fippen, who's our preschool administrator, and she does a fantastic job not only of having the students connect with each of the artists, but also sort of synthesizing the artists together. So right here we have, during our mini arts day camp, they're painting driftwood, inspired by Mary Knoll, but they're using brightly colored paints, also Mary Knoll, but then they're using glitter with Lloyd Bolin and the Rhinestone Cowboy House, which I think is a fantastic little combination of the two. And something else that she's really been fostering a lot with this early childhood and these younger learners is our literacy links to the arts. And you can see those over on the counter as well, near the lesson plans. And those will really take all these different children's books and connect them to the different art sites so that parents that maybe don't know how to talk as much about art or the different exhibitions can take this book and use it as a spring point where they can take the sheet that's in there and talk their children through it and really begin to sort of get that investment while they're young. And then I also work a lot with the Tellen Woodland Sculpture Garden, and I've been trying to do more and more workshops out there to sort of get more community members to know about this site, because not many people do know about this site. They'll walk in and be like, what is this place? And I'm like, well, you're in for a ride. And so it's really fun to see them come in, and I get to take them on a tour, and then they get to sort of explore the materials of concrete. It is a paver, so it's not as exciting as maybe making a huge log fence, but they get to do something, which is cool. And as another part of the working with the Tellen Woodland Sculpture Garden is that I get to work with some lovely people and do these Wandering Wisconsin events. And ours is called the Chair City Cookout. So Sheboygan has been known as Chair City because we had all these furniture companies. A lot of the well-made furniture back in the day was made in Sheboygan. And so we were known as the 4 C's. We had children's, churches, chairs, and cheese. The most important one. Just kidding. You can make your own decision which is the most important one. So with the Chair City Cookout, when it first started, it was a rainy weekend and it was a plein air thing, and we had 12 people show up, and it was wonderful because they had never been there before, but it was also a little disheartening because it was only 12 people. But 12 people is a far jump from 0 people, which is what we had when we didn't have the program. And I'm really excited to share with you that last year we had over 300 people come to the event. So I'm really, really excited about that. And so these are some images from that. We do still have the plein air painting within the program, because we do have people that come and they expect that now, which I think is really great. And we have plein air painters that come that are practice plein air painters, and they'll go in, and it's really, I think, fun for people not only to discover the site itself, but also to interact with these artists that and these painters that they don't know really how it's done. They've never seen a painting being painted before, so it's really cool that they get to experience that and see that step-by-step process. And then we have mini chair making, and so this is a picture of that, and it's all ages that go and do that, which is really cool. And then we also have music and food as well. So this is one of my colleagues that works here at the Art Center. He has a band, and so they will play. They played this past year, which was really cool. And I was excited to share that with them. And I think that's it for me.
So Jared Roll graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and received his Master's in History Museum Studies from the Cooperstown Graduate Program. After working as a curator in Maine for 2 years, in 2012, he moved back to his home state of Wisconsin to accept the position of Director and County Historian of the Monroe County Local History Room and Museum in Sparta. As director, he oversees the use and preservation of the Wagner Grotto County Park, a grassroots art site located 9 miles north of Sparta.
All right, thank you for the introduction. So what I hope to do is just be really practical in what I can share with you. I'll share with you how we let people who live in our area know about this wonderful place called the Wagner Grotto County Park, and how do we help them become inspired by what they find there. So as I was introduced, so my name is Jared, and I work here at this building, and this is our county's history museum on the first floor. On the second floor is a separate museum. It's the Deke Slayton Space and Bicycle Museum. We have 2 museums in one building. and so one full-time employee, that's me, and so I do hire someone to be there when I'm not there, like today. And just a correction, I've been here for 15 years, and part of my job is I run the county's history museum, and then we also are the site stewards for the Wagner Grotto County Park. So what is the grotto? If you haven't seen it before, this is one of those beautiful, wonderful, inspired outsider art sites. It's located about 15 minutes, a 15-minute drive north of Sparta, Wisconsin, on this small tract of land. What you would find there is a collection of sculptures. It's called the Glass Church, is what you see on the right-hand side, and it is an assemblage of sculptures and structures made out of concrete and broken glass and other found objects. I'll tell you just a little bit about the history. I know that when we talk about our sites, we get distracted. We want to focus so much on what makes them special. I can't do that as much today as I'd like to, because I want to talk to you more about programming. But I will just let you know, like, what is it? So, it's actually grotto, and that's, if you would find us, that's where you would find us, is over on that side of the state. So what is this place? Well, back in 1929, this German immigrant couple visited another site, one of these fantastic sites. This one is down in Dickeyville, and you've heard of it before. It's the Holy Ghost Park. So just a little bit about these two folks, because they weren't artists. In fact, they came to America in 1885, Paul and Matilda did, with their son Ewald, and they bought a farm in La Crosse first, and then they ended up farming in a tract of land just north of Sparta, where the grotto is today. And then they kept that land, but then ended up buying a Ford business in the town of Bangor, and they were in the used car business for several years. When they retired, they would spend their summers at their farm residence, which is in Little Falls. And so here are these two folks. They're not trained artists at all, but they visit this site and they come back and they have to create. And that's what they did. So from 1929 up through about 1937, they created a series of sculptures on their property made out of concrete and broken glass and other found magical little items. This is just a picture of their farm, which is where the grotto is today. And this is an early postcard, and what's fascinating about their site is that as they were building it, I mean, back in those days, people did something called Sunday drives, and they would stop and they'd check out what's going on at the Wegner residence. And they started, locally, they would call it the Glass Works. Later, it became the Glass Church. They would call it because of the church that's there. But it became known by the locals and others living within an hour drive. And the Wegners did not sell admission to it, but they would sell postcards and soda pop. And it's just, it was known locally for a long time. And unfortunately, though, Paul, the husband of the team, he passed away in 1937. So it was only 8 years that he was working on it. And then his wife Matilda and their oldest son Charles, who lived nearby, the two of them finished up some projects that were unfinished when Paul got sick and passed away. And then Matilda passed away in 1942. And so they didn't work on it for very long, but there it was. After they passed away, their son Charles, who shared their vision from the best of our knowledge, he tried to keep it going, fixing what he could here and there, but nothing more was really added to the site, and there it stood. And unfortunately, like all these sites, they're like sandcastles, and every freeze and thaw and hard storm that we get, little pieces of it fall down. And in 1986, this is what you would find out there. It looked like the ruins of some battle that occurred at some magical city somewhere. And thankfully what happened, of course, like all of us, the Kohler Foundation learned of this site, stepped in, rescued it. They purchased the property from the family, and they immediately began to hire a group to come and fix it up, restore it. They hired Preservation Services, Inc., Lisa Stone, and her team came in, and they fixed it up over the course of a year and brought it back to life. In September of '87, they gifted it to Monroe County. So it's not associated with a college, it's associated with a county, which brings with it, I'm the go-between in between because, sorry. So what happened then is that we've got county government, and they say, okay, we have this county park. It's not like our other parks, where we just basically mow the lawn. It's got some other things there that need to be taken care of. So why don't we have our history museum take care of it? And that made good sense. And so we have been doing that since 1987. I've worked here since 2002, and so that is the story of the relationship of this wonderful site to us at the History Room. Now, in terms of how do people use the grotto, a couple of things you need to know is that it's an unstaffed site. Nobody is out there. And so we don't know exactly how many people visit. We do have a protected sign-in book that you can open up, and we encourage you, there's a little sign that says, please sign in. And we ask you to record where you came from and how many in your party, how did you learn about it. And from that, we estimate it's about 2,000 people. About 2,000 people. And from that, a quarter of them are from our county, and then about 40% from outside of our county. And then what's really neat is that 35% are from outside of Wisconsin. We get people from all different countries come, each year and visit this site. And so, again, it's like you're driving out, you always feel like you kind of miss it. Like, did I miss it or something? Because you're driving 10 minutes past, and you're driving down, in rural Monroe County, and then you see that brown sign pointing to you take a left here, and you pull in, and there it is. And it's just one of these amazing off-the-beaten-track sort of places that surprises people. So the other thing is we have it open seasonally. So we say like Memorial Day through Labor Day. That's when we hire a portable toilet to be out there. That's when we pay someone to mow the lawn. That's when we stock it with brochures. And that's basically how the grotto is used. Sometimes people do get married out there yet. There have been over 70 weddings out there, and now and then, maybe once a year, we have someone to get married out there. But what is inspiring about the site? I could go on and on about this, but what's amazing about this place is that, again, it's like it's so unexpected. It doesn't fit in the landscape. It sits like a jewel on the landscape, though. And when you walk in there, your eyes just dart all around to these different colors and these different materials, and you can't help but play I Spy as you run your eyes down this fence, this glass-encrusted fence, and you're like, look at that. They put a little figurine's head in there, or there's an arrowhead right there, and it's just so whimsical and magical, and I'm so glad that we have this special thing in our county. I'm not an art historian at all, and I'm not an art educator. I'm more of I'm a material culture guy. And so it was a good fit for us that way. Yeah, it's just a neat place. So a couple challenges we have just in general about our programming. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's only been the last 5 years we've really done any programming out there since I've been on board. One of the biggest challenges is that it's 15 minutes outside of town. And when I am not in the office, I need to have someone there for me that can be in charge because you've got to be open to the public. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is that it's so removed, and it's one of those things where it's like the grotto's out there, but yet I know it can't be just out there. So the good news is that starting 5 years ago, approximately 5 years ago, I attended a meeting of the Wandering Wisconsin Consortium. And we met, and it was the year after the first plein air event was done, and we did not participate in that because it was like, what? That just seemed like too much work. And everybody has a Terry Yoho story, so I'm going to tell mine. So we were all sitting there, and Terry turns to me, and with a big smile, she says, "Jared, we would really like the grotto to participate in plein air this year." And I said, "We'll do it!" And we did, and what made it easy is that I had such a wonderful team of people to work with that came, like Bob Terrell, he came out and helped supply everything for us, that he made it easy. So that was our first foray into it. But at the same time, what happened is that I get a call from an area teacher who says, "Jared, I grew up in Sparta, and I always thought the grotto was a neat place. But I kind of like to take my students out there. Can I do that?" Now, just as a little background, I do programming. Like, I develop curriculum with teachers and do programming with over 2,000 kids a year at my museum. So, like, I have a great relationship with the teachers. We work with them all the time, but not with the grotto because, again, it's out of sight, out of mind. And so when she said this, I said, "Yeah, we can do this." And there's another reason why I was always hesitant about doing programming out there, and it has to do with what's colorful and glittering on the concrete. But I said, yes, let's do it, because I didn't want, you never say no to a teacher. And so what we ended up doing is that we developed a way for students to it's an introduction to this site that's in their community, it's in their county. The kids arrive on a bus, because they have to arrange transportation out there. And so they get off the bus, and you basically have 3 classrooms worth of kids coming. So we break them up into 3 smaller groups because we have to. The site is small. You can't have them just running all over the place because it's dangerous. So we break them up into 3 groups. Group 1 gets a walking tour that we just basically give them an overview. What is this place? Because how are you supposed to really wrap your brain around it? So we tell them, what is this place? What is it made out of? How long has it been here? And then the second part of that time is that we give them a scavenger hunt where they are encouraged to go around to the sculptures and find little things hidden, because it's one of the best things about the site anyhow. But it also is training them to look carefully and closely and find the magic in each one of these sculptures. So that's the first station that they go to. The second station investigates, well, how did they make this place? Now, ideally, I'd love to have some slurry there, some concrete, and then have them embed glass into it, but it wasn't practical. So what we ended up doing is we got some quick-dry clay, and we have this big flat tub of quick-dry clay, like in the shape of a rectangle, and we have the kids each take a piece of glass, not sharp stuff, but some glass pieces, and we talk about this process of how a piece of glass on its own isn't all that inspiring, but you start making patterns with them, and you step back and you look, you've got something beautiful there. And so they all participate and create in that, and at the end they have something really neat that reminds them, it ties them back to this site, and gives them an idea of how art is made from found objects like that. And then the third station they go to is more creating art on their own. So now what they do is they sketch, they're given a clipboard and a pencil, and they're to sketch something that they just connect to, that they enjoy, that they think is neat. And they are to draw it, and then when they go back to their classroom, they color it. We tried having them color it in the field, but after a couple of years of trying that, it didn't work out very well because they ran out of time and there wasn't enough it was just clumsy to try to share those resources. So that's what they do in a general way, just to get an introduction to the grotto. So what is some of the benefits of this program we do with this age group? By the way, these are second and third graders that we're doing this with. The biggest thing is they're getting site awareness. I mean, these kids didn't know it existed, and they have to know that it exists, because eventually they're going to be the ones in this community, and we're going to want them on our board. We're going to want them to care about this place. So site awareness is so essential. Also, this whole idea of the outsider artist, like, you don't have to be famous, you don't have to be professionally trained to create something beautiful and inspiring. I mean, Paul and Matilda, when I showed them the picture of Paul and Matilda, they giggle a little bit, because they don't, that is incongruent to their idea of what an artist looks like, I guess. And so that is a wonderful thing to introduce them to, I think, is that an artist doesn't have a certain look or a certain idea. An artist is somebody who creates art. And then we want them to come away with this idea that my surroundings can inspire me to create art. I mean, this place lends itself to it because it's colorful, it's unusual, it's whimsical, but as they leave this site, I hope that they have this little seed planted that as they look around them in their world, that there's something else in their world that can inspire them to create something. So challenges. Okay, I just caught that kid right there. He's on the right-hand side, he's running right there. This is a problem we have on the site, is that you have at least 70 kids there at one time. It's not a big site. The stairs are uneven, and when it's damp, it was slippery. So some of the challenges we face is transportation coming out there. They have to get bussed in, and with school districts, that's always an issue. It's weather permitting. Thankfully, every time we've been there, it's been either a nice day or it's been a light drizzle enough that the teachers were like, "We're doing it anyhow." You know, they're a tough bunch. Yeah. We have a limited space for a group like this, and honestly, I'm nervous when we're out there because I'm just waiting for a kid to touch glass. That kid in the upper left-hand corner, I caught him too. He's so tempted. He wants to touch that glass. Thankfully, we've never had anybody cut themselves because there's opportunities everywhere. But that's why we also do the hands-on part where they each get to touch some glass that isn't sharp, and we make it clear this is the one thing you can touch because they want to touch. We want to feed that itch for them or scratch that itch for them, because I have that too. Some of what we would like to do in the future, and again, this is Jared dreaming, and some of you have really inspired me, today and yesterday. We would like to partner with some older students who can hopefully, I would love it if we could get them to study more of the creation process. Like, how did Paul and Matilda create these things out of concrete and broken glass, and have them make their own art from the concrete and broken glass. And then just work with teachers to say, I mean, as I mentioned before, teachers may not have the opportunity to just talk about this whole idea of outsider art. Well, what a great opportunity to do, because you have an example of it in your own county. We could partner with teachers to get them to be able to teach more about this whole idea of outsider art. I love it as well. So quickly wrapping it up, the other program we do inspired by plein air was outdoors. This is one thing we do one day. It's just one day that we do it. It started as plein air painting, but we expanded it because what we ended up doing now is that we have 3 artists come on site, and one of them is a plein air artist, one of them is a mosaic artist, and the third works with clay. And basically, we provide these materials to the general public for free, and they create art. They can get as much instruction as they want, and then they can take that art home, and it's all inspired by what they see around them. So it's just been wonderful. What we found when we first did plein air is that we were targeting, we were torn in 2 directions. We're targeting professional plein air artists because we need them to kind of give it legitimacy. But we were torn because I wanted it to be a family thing as well, because that's the majority of our public. And Sparta, Wisconsin, it's pretty blue collar. It's we're pretty humble people out there, I guess. And I knew I wanted it to be accessible to everybody. And so it was interesting. We'd have professional artists, and we had this person who said, "I haven't painted since I was in high school." You know, and she's there with her 6-year-old kid thinking, my 6-year-old is going to be doing this. I'm not going to do it. I'm like, no, 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 you're going to do it too. And she does it, and she's excited about the whole process. So we added these other things, and it ends up being very, very successful for us. We have artist demonstrations out there. The first year we did it, we had 54 people show up over the weekend, and that was good. We were excited about that. The next year we had a little bit more. We had 160 something, and then the third year we had over 200. And now this past year, we just did it last month, it rained all day until 2:30. And this is heartbreaking for anybody who does any sort of outdoor programming, as you all do. But we still had 185 people show up. I don't understand. People pulled in with their windshield wipers on, eager to do art outside. It's like, I would turn around, but they didn't. So we're just like with the kids, we're creating site awareness. We're introducing this idea of outsider artists. We're giving an opportunity to make and take art. I mean, again, I love hearing these people saying, well, I haven't done art since I was in school. And they're 40, 50 years old. It's like, this is your chance. And they light up. It's for all ages. Those are our stats. Quick wrapping up challenges. Obviously, this picture sums it up well. This is from this year. Thankfully, we had enough canopies. When it rains, it can ruin everything. Thankfully, it didn't. So rain is an issue. It's weather permitting. And then we also have to deal with uneven terrain when it's slippery. We got glass. We have issues there. We have to truck in everything to the site and take it back out again. And that is a lot of effort. It's really hard to do. And plus, this is the other thing. We're at the mercy of we're trapped with land. Like what you see there is just a little bit beyond there. It's a very small site. We can't expand. We basically run out of space for what we're doing. I don't know how we would accommodate more than this. And we want to, because you want something successful to grow. We're at the mercy of the landowners who own the land across the street from that dirt road you see there. They let us park cars there at least that day. Now, they could change their mind one day and say, you know what, you can't park in our field this year. We're going to be doing something there. And that would really throw a wrench into our plans. And so I have approached them to see, would you sell it to us? Would you sell this land to us? And some of the families for it, some of the families against it, but we're working on that one. Because those are all big challenges to the site. So our future, we're going to deliver more to the site. We're going to increase sponsorship so that we can rent tables and chairs instead of hauling them from our museum. Pursue that adjacent land so we can grow this thing, bring in some increasing variety of art activities because we get a lot of repeat visitation. Have some live music, joint art creations among the people that are there. But the big thing for us is going to be figure out how we physically expand because we're really landlocked in that spot. But we're grateful for how it's grown. The people in our county are hungry for art, and that is a wonderful, encouraging thing.
Marilyn Rossmeyer is an award-winning teacher with a Bachelor of Science in Art Education and a Master of Science in Education. Recently retired from the Monroe School District with 38 years of teaching experience, she has been the Grandview Academy Education Director since its origin in 1997. She has also served on the boards for Wisconsin Arts Educators Association, Pecatonica. Is that right?
You got it.
Oh my goodness, I was nervous about that one. Pecatonica, it's kind of fun. Pecatonica School District, United Fund of Iowa County, and the Argyle School District Leadership Council. Marilyn.
So in 1981, my husband and I moved into a house up the road from what everyone referred to as a statue house. And so for many years, we just knew it as that. And it was falling into ruin, and it looked really, really unkept. So over the years, as we watched it fall apart, we wondered, does anyone else know anything about this place? And we found out a few people did, and over the years, we've learned a lot more about the artist. And I think what I'm going to do is just tell you a little bit about the artist's story. His name is Engelbert Koletnik. He was born in 1881 in Austria on a little farm, a little dairy farm, and decided as a young teen he wanted to go out and see the world. So he got on a steamship, and he traveled for many years, seeing all sorts of continents and seeing lots of experiences, and discovered that maybe he didn't want to go back to his home country. When he came to America, he fell in love with a young woman by the name of Catherine Toney, who was also an immigrant, but from Switzerland. So the two of them hooked up, got married, and decided to settle down in southwestern part of Wisconsin in a little town called Hollandale. Now, Nick had a lot of skills, but his primary profession ended up being farming. So he was a dairy farmer. As he delivered the milk every day down to the little village of Hollandale. His children grew and realized quickly that that was not what they wanted for themselves. And they grew up and went on into their world of doing very successful things. However, Nick had an injury in the mid-50s, in his mid-50s, and that ankle injury gave him a little extra time on his hands. So he began to play in concrete and glass. And from there, 20 years later, he had over 40 statues in his front yard, including, as you can see in the picture, the house, which is completely covered in concrete, glass, and stone. So, what is Hollandale? It's a little town in the driftless region of Wisconsin, and it's about 280 folks that live in that little area. It is in a very kind of a rural setting, similar to what Jared explained about the grotto. Nick, too, was influenced by the Dickeyville Grotto, and his house and some of the pieces around it definitely reflect that. So, I just want to talk a little bit about, we are a National Register site, and right now our battle is trying to keep that 290-foot tower that US Cellular wants to put up behind it. And so that's going to be hopefully to our favor. We'll see if that helps, because it certainly won't improve Grandview's view. We also are conducting lots of community programs, and I'll talk about those shortly. And we're started out pretty small, where we just had the folks who were within driving range, within a few miles, who would come to some of our classes. And now we've expanded all the way from Dubuque to Milwaukee, Madison. Teachers, families all come and visit us. And then finally, you know, we have this big idea of, well, do you have something you want to do? Or you have a plan of some creative thing that you would like to have a place or forum to do this in? Well, Grandview, we might be your place for that. So our cornerstones are pretty basic. We want to be more than just that place you come and visit, or the tourist place, attraction. We want to bring our local folks in, so that unlike when I first moved into the area, and I didn't know who that artist was, in that rundown, sad little spot, we would know about Nick Engelbert. By the way, in 1991, 30 years after Nick died, we were fortunate enough that the Kohler Foundation discovered the site and was able to purchase it. And in 1997, it was gifted to the county. But the county didn't want it because they had no county parks. So then they said, well, maybe the school will take it. And the school said, we just don't know what we would do with a site like that. So fortunately, my husband and a few other local folks in the community said, we're going to make a nonprofit. And this nonprofit is going to do a lot of educational things with the schools and Grandview. So it's called the Pecatonica Educational Charitable Foundation. And I'll just refer to it as a PEC Foundation because it is a mouthful. So I didn't come up with these plans certainly on my own. This board really put a lot of people, a lot of hardworking individuals, and experts of sorts, like teachers and administrators, in on the planning on what would be a good cornerstone for Grandview. So we've decided early on that the arts really should be for everyone. So let's make them affordable. Let's find grants so that if you don't have the $14 or the $100 for a class, you can come to ours for $2. Anyone, adult or children, all ages. We support and augment our public education. Through after-school programs, we invite teachers out to Grandview. It is their studio space. We embrace others to come there. We also are pretty close with our community organizations, so that if they have an idea or an event they want to create, or if they need some inspiration or a partner in things that they want to do, we're there for them. But most importantly, learning should be fun, and that art experience is fun. So we invite people out to Grandview to experience that. So our objectives, well, those are pretty easy. Create partnerships, which we have done. We look forward for opportunities to bring the world to Grandview. I like that one. We bring many artists out, and I'll talk about that shortly. We conduct workshops in the fine arts, but we also celebrate local talent. So our students really get to know who the artists are in our community. We operate the Grandview Historic Site. And we make sure that if anyone wants a tour, we will be there for that, and that the place will look as good as it possibly can. And we try to be good stewards to that land and to those sculptures. And that's kind of a hard one sometimes. But to be a place for community members to have educational staff who can seek their own personal growth, so that they can go to a place and know that they don't have to go to a university, or maybe they don't have to go 100 miles to some other art center, that they can actually get that from Grandview. So here's some examples of the audience, the people who come to Grandview. Now, typically you think it's rural children, yes, but when the children come, of course they bring their grandparents or their babysitter or their family. And that's kind of a nice addition to what makes that place special. People who might not usually attend an art event come to Grandview. Sports are really big in our community. We offer them an alternative. And, so often they don't see themselves as artists, but they want to see themselves as someone who can enjoy time within a few minutes of their home, do something quick with the children, and they really have fun at Grandview and understanding, these artists really are interesting people. And they really do have an interesting story to share, similar to what Nick may have. Lower income folks, single parents, a lot of homeschool families all come to our classes. Of course, schools, that's a natural one. We really partner a lot with about 3 very close schools geographically, so that they can bus the kids there quite easily during summer programs, or they can bring the kids to an after-school program. Family members, well, you know how that works. The kids bring the grandparents, and they bring the others back to Grandview. And teachers and artists. So programming through the years, I'll just go through this really quickly. We've had a theater project out there where it was performed on the grounds at Grandview by our middle school students at the Pecatonica school. They did something called the Open Window. We've also had our 6th grade class who created stories about the sculptures in Grandview's yard, reflecting the immigrants that Nick Engelbert was pretty proud about, his neighbors. And so they did this really interesting videotape about who these people were in our community, a lot about local culture, and the kids learned about our history of who we are as a neighborhood, knew more about their neighbors as a result of that. And then artists in residencies. And I'll talk a little more about that, but Liz Rex was one of them who came in and she talked about the artist within. And we brought in some of the old farmers from our community and said, you know something? You've got some really cool airplanes that are really big gigs out in your yard. You are an artist. And they go, no, I'm not. But indeed you are, because you are creating art. You just don't recognize yourself as someone that special. 20 years of summer school classes. We call it the Grandview Summer Academy. And over those years, I've learned a lot about what to do and what not to do, good contacts, people who are really excited about being at Grandview and able to work with kids from 3 years of age to 80-year-olds who come in walkers. We have a very broad range for all our classes, and I'll discuss that in a couple of minutes. But I'd like to spend just a minute talking about our Great Grandview Parade. And that started in 1997 with Molly Ross, who was an artist in residence. And when she came to Grandview from the Chicago Art Institute, she put up a 16-foot tall Paul Bunyan. But it wasn't concrete, as Nick had done. This Paul Bunyan was a lantern. So all the students, and 300 students and staff up the road, we shut down the highway, they come up to Grandview, and similar to what Jared was saying, we have stations. One station might be with an artist, another station would be Mud the Shed, where they bring memorabilia from home, and they get to stick it in this old, well, not so old, but it's a very interesting storage shed because of the things the children have put into the concrete, and the stories behind what they chose to put into that concrete. Another station would be cookies and graham crackers with strawberries with a whipped cream that Catherine Engelbert would have done. because Catherine was all about feeding anyone who visited Grandview. So we had to make sure that she was included in this lesson about Nick as well. And you have to have a tour. So we would have some of the local folks that would come up who knew Nick and his children give a tour of Grandview. But the other thing I want to tell you about is what you're seeing right there. And it's our most popular brochure that we still use many years later. It was a brochure not designed by any artist, but by many 6th grade artists in Mr. Carey's 6th grade class at Pecatonica. The kids wanted to learn about Nick. And so after they found out more about each statue and what it meant, they decided, how can we make that information available to more kids? So they did a children's walking tour brochure, and it looks like this, and it opens up, and it's a very bright, colorful brochure that everyone enjoys, whoever goes to Grandview, to learn more about who Nick was and why he did the things that he did. So our current venue, or menu that we have at Grandview, is the Academy, which is the Summer Academy, after-school programs. We go into several school districts, and we offer free programming for students from 3:30 when school is out until 5. 4 different school districts have had the benefits of this after-school program, and in this last 2 years, we've offered it not for $2 per student, but for free. We also have the Wandering Wisconsin tour, and I just want to make sure that if you haven't seen these are really cool. They're maps of all the different unusual vernacular sites in Wisconsin, and this is our road map. And I, as a teacher who comes from kind of a background of having a passion for these places, get an opportunity to take other teachers on a tour around the state. And then we have the artists in residencies. Current one right now is with Eric Fredericks, and he's going to build us a wood-fired kiln. We have Mud the Shed, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, and the outdoors events such as the plein air event, which Wegner also has, and the Arts Fun Day, which is bringing families to Grandview to enjoy art together. So here's our after-school program, and here are the students, both in Monroe in the middle school. We've gone all the way up to 8th grade with the after-school program, but primarily is between kindergarten and 6th grade students. And here you see some of the students probably presenting what the artist has taught them for that afternoon. One of my students that was working with me at the Monroe event said, you know, these are only $2 a class. How can we possibly make all this stuff for only $2 when you bring an artist in too? And I said, it's because of people who are kind enough to give us money to do these things. And so they wanted to make a sign, and I thought that was really neat. They said, can you tell them how much we appreciate this? Or we could do cards. So they made a nice little note just saying how much they did appreciate it. So affordable art is something that really makes a difference in these programs. Local artists lead the classes, and students learn always. We want to make sure they know about who Nick is. So the Grandview Summer Academy, we have between 20 and 30 classes each summer, and have been doing this is our 20th year. And this is a program that always brings in lots of local teachers because they can take it for university credit. It brings in not only art teachers, but classroom teachers. They can create their own curriculum, lesson plans, and use what they learned from this artist at Grandview in their own teaching. So it's kind of like filling their well again with creative ideas. And we really have had as many as 20 teachers take it for credit and per year. Typically though, it's between 5 and maybe 10. So they do come back and they can continue to grow from it because each time it's a different artist. So Wandering Wisconsin is always oriented toward usually teachers, classroom teachers or high school teachers, sometimes middle school. It's an extensive field study that we go around the state, maybe 5 to 7 different folk art sites. We visit historic outsider sites such as Wegner Grotto, Prairie Moon, the Rudolph Grotto, and of course, on that second night, or the first night going into the second day, we end up here at the John Michael Kohler Arts Center, where we cooperate and get the opportunity to either be in the Innovative Teachers Institute or use the resources that are here to inspire these teachers to go back and use the outsider or vernacular art in their own teaching. So our artist residency program has been really something that has bloomed in the last few years. So it started in 1997 with Molly Ross. I mentioned that Liz also has done some things there. We've had a ceramicist come in, and he looked at the Viking in the boat, which is in the yard that Nick did for all the Norwegian artists or Norwegian families around us. And he wanted to make something that would be gifted back to the school. So the children worked with this artist to create a duck Viking in a boat with all the seals that had their ideas put on the seals on the side of the boat. There's a story about how that actually got broken into a lot of pieces by accident sitting in the back porch because we'd just taken it out of the kiln. And we happened to have a friendly snake that was in that 3-season room that was attracted to the warmth of that sculpture and knocked it over. That project, that was once a 3-week project, turned into a 5-week project because the artist said, I have to glue it back together. Too many children have been counting on me to make sure that this art is theirs as well. And as we started gluing it back together, one piece after another, we started thinking about Nick. And you know, Nick did the same thing. I mean, well, maybe he didn't put them back together in pieces, but isn't that what we're doing with restoration? All the pieces that have broken down into his yard, bit by bit, were found and put back together and created a beautiful place that it is today. So it was a nice story to tell to the kids, and I think it made them understand a little better about what it took to keep Grandview looking the way it does today. So currently we have Eric in the center, and he is busy working on a kiln. The first thing he wanted to do was create a way to bring people. We need people to build a wood-fired kiln, and food always works. So the pizza oven was built because we couldn't get anyone to come out on a wheeled or portable pizza oven. And he said, we can do this. I can just create it. And we did. Within 3 weeks, he had the oven done, and it works remarkably well. And he's right. It does bring people to Grandview. Mud the Shed, that's that storage shed that sits right outside the grounds. And it was rather bland, pretty much gray initially, but it needed to be something that was going to bring people to Grandview, more than just maybe to visit the art. So we decided to let the community have a hand in changing its appearance. And we would use Nick's work as inspiration. So you can see the students when they came up for the Great Grandview Parade on the upper left, I believe. You can see where they're lined up with their memorabilia. One of my students who had a baby spoon in his hand said, well, I was going out the door and I forgot what to bring, so I pulled it out of my little brother's hand, and this is going in the wall. And he said, when I'm 85, I'm going to bring him back, and we're going to look for that spoon. So it does bring people back. These events really make our community feel like they have ownership in Grandview, and that this is their place to shape and to add things to the art, and that some of it doesn't always have to go home with them. It can stay at Grandview, and it can be a constant reminder that we, like Nick, can make masterpieces and know that there's something that other people will come and photograph and enjoy. Just a quick story. I'll make it very short. My high school students wanted to know what mosaic was. We brought up on Google search all these different mosaic patterns in the art that people have made, and lo and behold, there was the window of that shed on one of the primary Google searches at the very top. I was thrilled to see it, and I was excited to tell my kids, that's why we do art, because other people appreciate it and they want to enjoy what you have. So we've had some very sweet moments in our history, of course. Governor's awards are always appreciated. We've got Standing Up for Rural Wisconsin Award from Libby Burmaster, our state superintendent. There, my husband is accepting from Tommy Thompson the top rural initiatives, or the top rural development award. So others have looked at what Grandview's doing and have said, keep it up. We want to encourage you to do more. So finally, what do we want from our kids or in our adults and our community when they leave Grandview? Well, we want them to know about local cultural arts, because Nick's yard is filled with immigrants, whether it's the Habsburg Castle, or if it's the Viking in the boat, or if it's the Swiss Patriots he built for his wife who was from Switzerland, or the double-headed Austrian eagle that he was so proud of his own country for, but most importantly, the largest and the most important statue in his yard is of the American eagle and the United States flag, because that's home to him now, his new home. And maybe our students need to know that same appreciation. We might be from all parts of the world, but the United States is a place to be proud of as well. And then Wandering Wisconsin in service, it's nice to know that when you cast these seeds out to a few teachers, they take this back with them and they teach it to their children. And they want them to understand how important this outsider or vernacular art is, and give our students that same permission that you can create art even if it doesn't look perfect, even if it isn't the prettiest thing you think it could be, it's yours. And it gives added voice to Nick. You know, we've got many voices touting what we're doing here and how important vernacular art is. The parade, well, that's all about learning about Nick and why he's an immigrant that we want to look at as our own local hero. And then create partnerships. You can't do it alone. You've got to get other people in your community fired up about who you are and what you're doing. You can't just say, we're the Grandview people. We want it to go beyond Grandview, beyond Hollandale, out into the whole state and the Midwest if possible. And I'm realizing that today and yesterday. That's what these conferences are all about. That's why we're here together, and to keep these things alive. The picture that you're seeing in the bottom corner is done by Doug Haynes. And it's his masterpiece that was created in one of our plein air events. And that's Grandview. And there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you to our panel. So we have a few minutes, and Peter has a microphone. So yes, if you have questions, we'll come over to you. If you could say who you are, where you're from, that'd be really helpful for us.
Hi, my name is Liz Hamilton. I teach in the Foundation Art program at the University of Kentucky. And I was wondering, so like I have all 18, 19, 20-year-olds who have no concept of art outside of like the incredibly narrow view of their art history classes. So I wanted to know if you had any like strategies or suggestions to bringing art that like we not only don't have geographic access to, but that we don't have any academic access to really, and how you would approach that.
Wonderful, thank you. Who wants to tackle that? Jen?
I'm sorry.
Jen.
One thing that we've found kind of successful with some of our students is making comparisons to artists that they may know. So like Mary Knoll and Alex Calder, for example, is a really good one. And some of Alex Calder's less known works, like he did this really whimsical fish that was filled with a bunch of different pieces of glass. And when you see things like that, you can really make like a much more apparent connection. And then we've also, the education department has developed these history links to the arts too. So those have been sort of a vehicle in which we can sort of make that connection as well. But I honestly feel like if there's any way that you can give your students a more immersive experience through, I don't know, virtual reality perhaps, and I think with Art Centers just did a virtual reality thing for a Tellen, or they did like a 3D pano view, so hopefully you'll be able to see that at some point soon. I think that would be the best way to do it if you can't actually go to a site. Yeah, did you have any?
I mean, I guess I could add to that part of my research work was about adults who identify as non-artists and kind of looking at why. And that sprung from, I mean, I was a studio trained, my bachelor's degree is in fine arts, and I left there feeling kind of disjointed because the places where I felt art was most exciting was in kind of everyday life celebrations and circumstances. So the how is, it may be difficult, but I think the why is really important because it really does kind of allow a broader range of entry points into art and meaning making that's really important for a range of people, so including young budding artists.
I'm Sister Carolyn, and I teach both high school, but I did grade school. I think we have to be much more brave teachers to tell art history classes that we don't have to model on Europe anymore. Every curriculum seems to start there and never get to the present. That's one problem. But secondly, we have such a wealth, and we may have to help those art history teachers find it. But that was true when I was at school almost 30 years ago, and it's still going on. We have to have courage, folks.
You're here.
Thank you.
I'm Jerry Steffel. I teach in the art education program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I'm the education chair at Intuit, the Center of Outsider Art in Chicago. So we deal with a lot of stuff with self-taught artists. And something to do with your classroom is literally have every one of the students look all over the world for site-specific work, have them present on it, and all of a sudden there's 20 different models and then you have 20 models in your classroom that you can use later on. So it's really wonderful. And into it, we have a teacher fellowship program for 12 Chicago public schools, 2 teachers per school, and once a month in the fall to January, we take them on field trips. We'll be coming to Kohler in November. And they write curriculum around using self-taught artists as catalyst for their curriculum. And they teach it in the spring, and we have a show at Intuit in the back gallery from the middle of May to the middle of June. And there's an opening, and these kids are just so excited about what they're doing because they have to come to Intuit for a field trip. And here you have these 10-year-olds telling their parents, come on, I want you to see the Henry Darger room. Let me tell you all about it. Because we do have Darger's room and his artifacts and source material in the collection. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a wealth of information. And we're just getting ready for the Henry Darger Resource Kit to become public from a huge grant we got. It's 85 type pages right now and another 20 pages of illustrative work. And there's lesson plans and all these columns, and you can take it from A to C to D and go anywhere you want so you can interrelate it. And it's going to be broadcast to Chicago Public Schools in November, and then in December for the state of Illinois, and then it'll be open for access online. So
Nice, very nice.
Wonderful.
That's yummy.